Okay guys, I'm back with another setup for the Porsche Cup. This time we're going to be looking at the Nurburgring Gt3 track. It's another track that's being used online, so I thought I'd get the slight alterations that you do need to do for this setup. So for this video we're not going to hot lap the video, we're just going to show an online race driving the Gt3 Cup car, the 5 laps at Nurburgring, which is the setup that's on the PS4 at the moment. And we're just going to see how it performs, this setup, and we're not going to push to the maximum. We're going to just try and keep it clean, because as far as I remember, there was no one really pushing us in this race. I just wanted to get some footage just to drive the car clean, not pushing too hard, just keeping it steady. Did try and push a bit harder sometimes, but sometimes you're going to make mistakes if you start pushing too hard anyway, especially with this car where your tyres don't really get up to the temperature that well. So we start off the line, get a reasonably good start. We've got someone on our right hand side. We're going to go over to that right hand side just to cover that inside. One thing you need to be careful of with driving this car is the first lap. What I tend to do is just get it in a higher gear sometimes, and also just be careful on the throttle. Like here now, just be careful in third gear. I would take that in third gear normally anyway, but just be careful, go in that gear a little bit sooner than you would normally do. Same here, going into second gear, be nice and careful on the throttle. Don't be putting the foot down too hard. See how we went in the gear very early into third gear there. Don't be scared to use some of that runoff area on the left on the first lap, because it will just save the car from spinning. If you try and turn too sharply while putting the power down, there's a high chance you're going to spin the rear wheels and possibly lose the back end. So make sure you're braking a little bit earlier on this first lap compared to what you would normally. Obviously the car's not got its grip, the maximum grip. The brakes aren't fully up to temperature, so you just got to be very careful on this first lap with this car, on this track especially. I mean, the Red Bull Ring is, you have to be careful, but it's not nowhere near as much as this track. You just got to be a little bit more careful than you would normally. And then around about now you can start seeing the temperatures are getting a little bit higher now. We're getting into 50s on the rear and mid 40s etc on the front, and that's the point where you can start pushing a little bit harder with this Cup car. When they're in the 50s to 60s on the front and 70s on the rear, that's when you know you've got them in a nice range really. It's strange that with this car that it's similar to the Cayman, they actually feel a bit faster when they're just short of being in green. I haven't really had them in maximum green yet, but even when you go to hot lap and you start with them on full green, it just feels a little bit faster with them on slightly cooler temperatures. A bit strange, but it seems like that with the Cup car and the Cayman Cup car. GT3s obviously you want them in green, but see now we're going over the line for our first lap and we're comfortably in the lead, and we've done a nice clean first lap there. We're over the line, I think it's about 2 minutes 12 or something like that. It's not really pushing that hard, just taking it nice and easy. Now we're going for our first proper lap where we're going to push a little bit harder, but I always find that first lap with this car you can never really push 100% because the tyres are still a little bit cold on the front end, so you're not going to get the full front end grip that you really want from the car. It's normally around lap 3 and 4 that you can start peaking off and getting some really nice laps, and then lap 5 if you really want to go for it you can, but sometimes you can make mistakes. I think on this run here we didn't get the perfect last lap in because we just made a little error, but you can see now we're obviously we're going to be up on the delta anyway, because obviously the first lap was running with cold tyres and you're starting off the grid, you're going to be slower anyway. But we're running a reasonably okay lap so far. We're just starting to push the boundaries a little bit harder. Braking zone, we're braking just there, just before that bit of tarmac on the left. You see where it cuts off and goes out a bit, and staying in second gear there. Sometimes I do find that if you do go in that corner in second gear and you get the power down, and you can start feeling the wheel go a little bit loose on the wheel, where your rear end's starting to slide slightly. I just up it into third gear, just dulls the power that a little bit, and it will help you out on the exit of that corner. So now going through to the left hander there, again I stay in third gear, briefly into fourth gear and then go back down to third gear for this right hander, and you will get like, I like to get it so the rears are starting to slide slightly, and then I'm hard on the power, and then you get a maximum of like a slingshot out of that corner. You get a really nice pull all the way down the straight now. It can gain you a good few temps if you get that perfectly. This corner's a tricky one. We've actually lowered the ride height because though it can be a little bit tricky on that fast chicane sometimes, normally even if you do make a mistake, as long as you're on the right line it won't chuck you off the track, and I just found that lowering the ride height a bit for this track did help out a bit. Obviously the Red Bull Ring's a lot more about straights and just accelerating out the corners. This has got some fast corners and change of directions. You just need a bit more stability on the car, so we lowered the ride height down slightly for this setup. I think that's the main changes we made. We also, I think, slightly altered the aero, but we'll get to the setup after when we get to that part, because we did change some other things. You can see the first lap at 59.4, not the fastest lap possible. I've had another couple of races online with this car, and I've come so close to hitting a 57.9, but I always end up on about 58.4 because I make a silly mistake when I'm trying to push too hard. But it should be possible to hit, if you really do nail a lap together and get it nice and clean, you should be able to hit a 57.8, I'd say 57.7, but we've not managed to hit that perfect lap yet because I've not actually done too much running on this track. I think the best I've hit so far is a 58.2 or 3, but it should be possible, like I say, if you really hook up every corner to get the lap just into the 57 running this setup. Again, we're still running high downforce. It's not much different from the Red Bull Ring setup. Obviously at Red Bull Ring we ran 411 on the downforce, even though it's a power track really in a way. I'm just finding this car, it's a little bit like, I don't know if it's just how I like the cars to handle, especially when you're running hard tyres. I remember when I did a V8 Supercar League on Project Cars, it was a similar thing with that. You were running hard tyres a lot of the time because the durability on them. And nearly every track I got to, I ended up just maxing out the downforce. I think there was a couple of tracks where I went down slightly with Bathurst, but I still ran very close to the maximum on downforce. It's just something I prefer the car to handle like. I'd rather have the speed around the corners and gain the time around the corners. And you may lose a tenth or so on the straights, but if you've gained a tenth on the corners, you're not really going to be in trouble. Plus you've got more stability, especially for the lap 1. I always find that if you've got obviously that maximum downforce for lap 1, you're going to give yourself maybe a second and a half advantage over someone behind you if they're running low downforce, and it's more security, more consistency. Consistency is key for myself. I'd rather be consistent in a race, be all out fast, but make the odd error, and it's going to cost you a lot of time. So you can see now we're running into, I think that's a 58.6 there on that previous lap, so we've got a reasonable lap there. And see on the doubts, we're quite a bit up already on this lap. I think this lap should have been a lot better than what it ended up at, but we made a silly mistake again. We didn't get the best exit from that corner. I noticed there straight away. We didn't get the power down at the perfect point. If you really do hook that corner up, you can gain a good few attempts. But it's just about getting on into third gear as soon as you can. And you can see there on that corner, we actually got on the power reasonably nice coming out of that corner. This corner can be a bit tricky. You've just got to give it a little bit of a lift in fourth, and then try and get it into that curb on the left, use some of the curb on the right, and then into fifth gear as you come out the exit there. And that's pretty much perfect. You can probably take it flat out in fourth, but again, it's going to be risky, and you risk making a mistake. I'd rather just back off and lose a tenth and guarantee that you're not going to make a mistake, especially in the race situation. Obviously, if I was getting pushed to the limits and I had someone behind me where I was getting really pushed hard and they were like a couple of attempts behind me, then you're going to start pushing a little bit harder naturally. But when there's no need to push that hard, I don't really see the point in maxing out anything. You see now we're pretty much heading for around the 58.5, but we made a mistake there, lost a fair bit of time on that corner, but we got it back a bit coming on the exit of it. So I think we go over line 58.5, but that lap should have really been a very low 58, but couple of errors in the lap. And then we're moving on to the final, I think this is the final lap now. And I did try and push really hard. You can see the delta, and that really annoyed me. I had to back off slightly. Someone doing donuts on turn 1, I mean, fair enough, you know, have fun, do whatever you want, but don't ruin other people's races. That nearly ruined my race, and it came so close to clipping my front end, and I didn't want to back off because I was trying to go for a fast lap, but obviously I had to back off a bit, which cost me maybe a tenth or so, but I think we still managed to keep the lap in the 58s. But you can see what I mean by the tyre temperatures. Now the rears are pretty much in the perfect temperature now, and the fronts are close to the temperatures where you're going to hit a really good lap. It's a bit annoying that they didn't put this race in as a 8 or a 10 lap race. I'm a bit annoyed about the way they've done the rotation really with the console this update, because the Red Bull race is mixed where it's 8 cars running the Club Sport and 8 cars running the GT3 Cup. I would personally rather just have all 16 people racing the same car, because by the time you get to halfway around that track on the Red Bull Ring, half the people from each car is left. You're running with three GT3s and 3 Cayman Cups, and they're obviously divided because the speed difference between the cars. So you're basically having a race with 2 or 3 cars. It just seems like a very daft decision they made. Hopefully they'll learn and not do that again. It's like the GT2 cars. I would rather them put the GT2 cars back as a single server, like none of the LMP cars racing with them. Just have 16 GT2 cars. I used to really enjoy racing the GT2 cars, and then they've changed them, and now you'll see online they're just not as popular now. It's a shame they've done that, because the GT2 are really fun to drive, and I really like the challenge of driving them without the ABS. But anyway, we're going over the line again. We just managed to squeeze a 58, and you can see the setup's really consistent. It's driving nice. It's not really gonna. It might not be the ultimate speed setup, but it's consistent and should really serve you well online. So we're going to have a little look and see what changes we made. It's very similar to the Red Bull Ring setup. I think pretty much used the base setup and just altered what I felt needed altering, because we didn't do too much changes. We just I think we briefly we experimented with the aero. If you want to run maximum, like I say, you can. We ran it on 10, which is close to maximum. It's going to be very similar hand. That just gives me a little bit more front end running it on 10, and you can see ride height, we adjusted that quite a bit. Like I say, it was just to give a more of a ground effect to the car, and obviously you can't adjust any of the damper settings, so make sure you give it a try, see if it helps you out. I hope it does, and if this video has helped you out, or make sure you leave a like and subscribe for more future videos. Thanks again for watching.